he died. That is also considered a type of accidental death. And then the third type is where you stab someone, right? you stab him, and you kill him. This is called, these three types, you have qatl khata, which is a mistaken death. You have shubha amd, meaning that it is, it's like you intended to hurt him but not kill him. So the first one would be involuntary manslaughter. The second one would be voluntary manslaughter. And the third one is what is called, I think it's called second degree murder or something, first degree murder, is where you actually murder someone. And these are the three categories within Islam. So in this situation, which one applies? So if it's the third one, what is the difference between these three? All right, what is the hukam? If I kill someone by accident, what am I to do? What happens Islamically? We didn't talk about this in fiqh. So you have to pay diya, right? You have to pay diya, which is 100 camels. Yes.
Within a year or something like that, right?
Within 3 years. Yes. Yeah. You have to pay 100 camels, and you have to fast for 2 months. So basically, either you have to free a slave or fast for 2 months continuously. If you don't have a slave, you fast for 2 months. That's in the first situation. And in that situation, you can have the family can pay on your behalf. Yeah. All right, the family can pay on your behalf. In the second situation, where you hurt him, it was involuntary manslaughter or voluntary manslaughter. In that situation, what happens? You would pay the diya, right? You would pay the blood money, and you would have to fast for 2 months. Okay. And also in this one, your family can pay on your behalf. The last one, right, where it is second degree murder or first degree murder, when you actually actively try to kill someone, or you actively kill someone, what is the recompense in that situation? The death penalty, right? So the death penalty would apply in that situation because you killed someone, and so you in turn would be killed as well. And the death penalty would apply to you, and you have to pay. You still pay. You still pay, but this would directly come out of your funds, right? This would not fall on the. It would not fall on the family. Okay. So in this situation, did we decide? Is this mistaken? Is it involuntary, voluntary, or is it murder? Okay.
But intention was there too at the same time.
Sure, but where was the mistake? So here, remember the three situations?
Yeah.
The involuntary, the voluntary manslaughter was, I was intending to hurt this person. So over here, the mistake, where is the mistake?
Judgment.
The mistake is in judgment. And because there's a mistake in judgment, he has to, So he has to fast. Right, but he doesn't have to pay the blood money.
So the person who gave the verdict has to fast, or?
No.
Oh.
The person, okay, here. So what are the three situations? Let me go over them very quickly. You have involuntary manslaughter, which is basically where you kill someone by accident. You're driving, you're not paying attention, somebody walks out into the road, you hit them and they die. Did I intend to hit this person? No, right? And he died. Okay. So there has to be some kind of accountability in that situation. Okay. In the second situation, I hit someone, right? My intention was to hurt this person. I punched him and he dies. So based on my hitting him and striking him, was my intention to kill him? No, it's not, right? This would be voluntary manslaughter, like where, and here there's accountability. In the third situation, I take a knife and I stab him in the chest, right? This person, I actually what? I intended to kill, so this is why it's called qatl amd. Yani like I intended, it's clear the intention was there to kill. And there are different ways that scholars differentiate between these types of situations. So for example, and things happen, right? So if I'm driving down the street and I'm eating a date and I throw the date pit out the window, it hits someone in the head and he dies. It just happened, right? His death was written at the time that the date pit hit him. What happens? Start driving faster, right? No.
Don't turn around.
That's one of those things where you just, I didn't do anything, right? That would be a mistaken death, right? And even in mistaken death, you still have to pay the fine and you still have to fast 2 months. In this situation, why is it that Osama was not ordered for the death penalty? He was not ordered to pay money, and he was not ordered to expiate.
So on the first one, you said the accidental, if I'm not mistaken, you have to fast and pay, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And the second one, too,
Yeah.
you have to fast and pay.
Yeah.
But he did not do neither. Am I correct?
Yeah. So why?
We said there's a mistake on the judgment.
But I'm saying here. Let me ask this question. In all of these 3 situations that I gave you guys, where was the doubt? The doubt.
Whether it was intentional?
Intentional, right? The doubt was the intention. In the situation with Osama, where's the doubt?
Whether they did it or not?
No, Osama did it. Osama killed the guy.
Whether that person was,
Whether that person was what? Whether that person was Muslim or not. That's where the doubt was, right? Because there's no way to check. He killed him. The person that he killed. And if you kill someone in battle, what happens? Is there any blood money to pay? Is there any accountability? And during battle, there's not, right? There's none of those things. So in the heat of battle, a poor judgment call, what is the accountability that's there? There's spiritual accountability. Why? And how do we know that there's accountability?
So it's fast.
No, not in that sense. Personal. It's more personal accountability. How do we know that there is?
he said that I wish that today was the day I became.
Okay, Osama knew what he did when he heard from the Prophet ﷺ. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said you killed him, and he said La ilaha illallah.
What are you going to do when
Like when you stand in front of Allah, what are you going to do with La ilaha illallah? And even in this entire statement, did the Prophet ﷺ actually affirm or deny that person's Islam?
He said he cannot open his mouth and see it, so you have to accept that he is.
Again, did he affirm or deny the person who he killed's Islam?
No.
He didn't affirm it, nor did he deny it. All he was trying to tell Osama was that you did something what? You did something wrong. You made a huge mistake, and you need to be careful of this. This is not, La ilaha illallah is not something to play with. Even if he hurt you, even if he struck you, there are other narrations that they were fighting. He actually killed. You know what I mean? So you have 2 companions fighting against this mushrik. The mushrik kills one. His sword gets knocked out. He goes and hides behind a tree. As soon as the sword comes down, he's like, La ilaha illallah. So, is it possible that he got emotional? Is it possible that he was angry? He's upset? Yeah, all of these things are definitely possible. But the Prophet ﷺ, the message that he ﷺ was trying to give Osama was that, listen, this is not something small. This is not something to play with. And it's a huge lesson for us. When somebody takes their shahada, how much investigation do I have to do? None. If somebody comes to me and says, I want to take my shahada and I want to accept Islam, what do I need to ask him? Tell me about Allah. Tell me about the Messenger ﷺ. Why did you accept? The only thing I'd say, are you ready to take your shahada? Right? That's the only thing I need to ask. And then all of these other things, like I had a brother who had taken his shahada. He came back and he's like, I think I'm still Buddhist. I still have some of these Buddhist beliefs, etc., etc. And I was like, okay, let's explore them and let's talk about it and blah blah blah. And alhamdulillah, all the doubts that he had were clarified. But I didn't ask him before he took his shahada. How do you feel about Buddhism? Do you still believe in this? And why is that? How come the Prophet ﷺ how come he doesn't have us interrogate people before they accept and they take their shahada?
You don't want to be a barrier.
Huh?
You don't want to be a barrier.
You shouldn't be as someone coming to Islam, we should never be a barrier, right? We should always be welcome. We should always be accepting. There's no reason for us to ever prevent anyone from coming into Islam. And if someone takes their shahada and they have some mistakes, what can we do? Right, we can guide them. Do I need to fix all of those mistakes before they come into Islam?
No.
Why?
It'll come into
They don't know better.
Because things will come in time, right? And not just that, a person can take their shahada, and are there even sometimes certain major elements that they can be excused from knowing? If someone first takes their shahada and they're like, oh, I didn't know how you had to pray. Is that reasonable? Yeah, it's reasonable, right? Even though it is a pillar, even though it's fundamental, right? So you have all these elements that are definitely there and that are definitely important, but at the end of the day, if a person is ready to take their shahada, I should be what? I should be welcome, I should be opening, and I should say, okay, repeat after me. That's it.
So just the slightest and small possibility that they were truthful and they had pure intentions to take their shahada,
Yeah.
Outweighs
Any doubt.
any doubt.
So
That's the point of these hadith.
that's the point of many of these hadith. And basically, so my shaykh, he actually came up with a maxim. And he says, "Man dakhala Islam yaqinan la yakhruj minhu illa biyaqin." He says that an individual who enters Islam with certainty cannot leave it except with what? With certainty. Meaning that the moment somebody says that, if someone says their shahada, this is what? Is that certain or doubt?
Certain.
That's certainty.
Yeah.
And now that he's entered, there's nothing he can do or say that will allow him to leave Islam except what? It has to be 100% certain. Example. If someone says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, they pray, they fast, blah, 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 and they're like, I don't know about this. I don't know about the story of Nuh in the Quran. That statement is what?
Doubt.
There's doubt in that statement, right? Because it's possible that what? He's like, meaning that some of these details I'm having trouble following and understanding. Yes? Did he express it in the best way?
Well, I mean,
Not really. No, I don't think so. I think it's actually a very bad statement. It's a very bad way to express that, right? Yeah, I have doubt in the story, right? Because superficially it looks like what? That he doesn't believe in the story. But because this sentence can be taken in multiple ways, I'm obligated to do what?
So to accept
So-
not the doubt, but the certain.
So he's still what?
he still asks
He's still Muslim.
He's still Muslim.
He's still Muslim, but now I have to explore. Because what he said is not enough for me to say that this is disbelief.
Okay.
And there are many situations like this. Just because someone does something, it doesn't allow me to say, oh, this person's outside the fold of Islam. And why? Why is that? Why? Someone actually said to me, "It's like, Ben, you make it so hard to take someone out of Islam." What do you guys think about that? Because it should be. Right? Why should it be easy? Like one of my, I remember one of my friends, they had said it one time to me. They're like, "Al-Islam sa'b." They said that once a person enters Islam, it's difficult. It's difficult to what? To get out. Like you have to say, like, if somebody said like, I believe in Allah and like praying, blah blah blah, but Jesus is the Son of God. That's it, right? That's shirk. Like you have now associated partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you have exited the fold. You know, I think Islam is great and I like all the prayer and all of these things. I don't think Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the final messenger. Disbelief, right? These are very clear statements that I have no choice. Like there's nothing, there's no second guessing any of these things. But Islam is such, and this is, it shows us the value of Islam, and it shows in the sense that the moment that a person takes their shahada, the moment that a person gives me salam, the moment that I see somebody fasting or praying or giving zakat, I am obligated to treat them as a Muslim. I have no right to treat them otherwise. So remember, you know how we talk about like being judgmental and like the problems that people have in their communities? Imagine if they had this mentality and this mindset. The problem is that we actually have a lot of doubt when we deal with others. Why do you think that is? Well, tazkiyah for sure, right? What does it boil down to? Why do I doubt others? Arrogance. If I'm doubting others, where does that put me?
You're higher.
Right? It puts me above everyone. Because now, and the thing is, we all like to feel better about ourselves, right? Everyone likes to feel special. Everybody likes to feel like they're part of a special club. Everyone likes to feel they're part of a special group, right? It's a very natural feeling to want to be part of these things. So the moment we exclude ourselves, we allow ourselves to be exclusive. We allow ourselves to be separate. And that's why we become judgmental toward others. But if I realize, okay, well, we're actually at the same level, I'm no longer what? I'm no longer better. And it can become very difficult, right? To swallow, right? Man, like I'm not really better than anyone else. And the only thing that makes us, subhanAllah, what is the thing that makes us different? To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does Allah care how tall we are, or how short we are, how dark, how light? Our taqwa. And how can we judge an individual's taqwa?
By their manners, their
Can you? Can you be like, oh, he's level 17.
No. Oh, you can't.
She's 5.
You
Right?
can't.
You can't. Right? It's not something that's possible. And that's what makes it so amazing, right? Like, you can look around a room and you have no idea where people stand with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, including ourselves. And it just levels the playing field that much more, and it allows us to be less judgmental of those around us, because I no longer have that superiority. And that's why it's something that's so important, right? As long as a person accepts Islam, I will never know how close this person is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or how far I might be. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all near Him. Ameen. So over here, because of the doubt, right? Because of the doubt of this person's Islam, he did not have to pay the penalty. He was not held in to be accountable for murder, so the death penalty was not applied to him, and he didn't have to fast, right? So there's no kafara, there's no diya, and there's no qisas, right? So he wasn't held accountable for any of these things. Some scholars say that he still had to fast. Because of the death that incurred, but wallahu alam, because we don't have anything on it, it would seem that all three of these actually fell because of the doubt on whether this individual was Muslim or not. And the other thing in this situation is that basically the Prophet ﷺ, he actually brought everyone together. And this is one of those rare cases where he actually makes a display of Osama. And do you think that would be easy or difficult for the Prophet ﷺ? It'd be difficult. Why? Right, he loved Osama. Like he like really loved Osama, right? Like he really loved Osama, and for him to put him out on display like that, it must have been something that was very very difficult for the Prophet ﷺ, to make it. And it shows how heavy it was what Osama did, because he wanted everyone else to learn and everyone else to see. Even though he had to make a spectacle out of, the one, he was known as the beloved son of the the son of the beloved. And the Prophet ﷺ loved Zayd ibn Haritha so much, and when he had a son, he loved his son so much. So, and he had to bring him forward because he wanted to teach this lesson and tell the people, like, listen, even if it's somebody who I dearly love, it's not about me. It's not about me. I don't give any preferential treatment. The truth will always be the truth. What lesson can we take from that?
The main one, when it comes to the truth, you should, even if it's a family member, just like you said, you should actually take the right way instead of covering up.
It doesn't matter who it is.
That's what I'm saying.
Right? It's like no one's accountable. And not just that, we should hold those close and dear to us to what? We should hold them to a higher standard. We should hold them to a higher standard. Why? Because we want them to be successful. And if we want people to be successful, we have to make sure that that standard that we hold for them is higher. So I think, that these are some of the benefits, at least, that I took from this hadith, and the importance of understanding and grading and dealing with an individual's Islam. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى قال حدثنا زهير بن حرب ومحمد بن المثنى قال حدثنا يحيى وهو بن قطان وتحويل الإسناد وحدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا أبو أسامة وابن نمير كلهم عن عبيد الله النافع عن ابن عمر عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وتحويل الإسناد وحدثنا يحيى بن يحيى ولفظ له قال قرأت على مالك النافع عن ابن عمر أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من حمل علينا سلاح فليس منا. So in this hadith, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that whoever carries a weapon against us, then he is not from us. Or who draws a sword against us is not from us. So this wording is not unique, right? This is not the first time that we're coming across this wording. The next hadith, he صلى الله عليه وسلم قال حدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة وابن نمير قال حدثنا مصعب وهو ابن المقدام قال حدثنا إكرمة ابن عمار عن إياس ابن سلمة عن أبيه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من صلى علينا السيف فليس منا. Like whoever bears their sword against us or raises their sword against us is not from us. قال حدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة وعبد الله بن براد الأشعري وأبو كريب قالوا حدثنا أبو أسامة عن بريد عن أبي بردة عن أبي موسى عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من حمل علينا السلاح فليس منا. That whoever raises their sword or raises their weapon against us is not from us. What do you guys think?
So enemies are disbelievers? People who attack, you know?
So how is this related to the previous hadith of Osama?
It's Muslim against Muslim.
Right, so he's talking about Muslims against other Muslims. طيب. Did the companions fight? Did they go to civil war?
Yes.
طيب, so how do we understand that in light of this hadith? Executions, they happened, yes? Death penalty is carried out, yes? طيب.
We're like, how come you guys clues? We're like, wait.
I'm just making it worse. What do you guys think? So here, when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying this, does he mean it in an absolute sense?
No, maybe not.
No, right? Usually, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam speaks, he doesn't speak in absolutes. Right? There's always going to be room. There's always going to be exceptional cases, and the question is like, okay, well, you know, whoever raises their sword against us, what if I'm being attacked by other Muslims? Will every Muslim, just because a person is Muslim, does that mean that that person has good intent? No. There are Muslims who want to harm other Muslims. So what should I do? I defend myself. But what about this hadith? I'm raising my sword against another Muslim.
I think it's talking about those people that ill intentions.
Right? It's talking about those individuals. Right? It's talking about basically whoever raises their sword against another Muslim with ill intent. With ill intent. Yeah. But during the Civil War, did either side have ill intent toward the other? No.
They had their reasons.
Right, they had their reasons,
Yeah,
right?
their reasons, but their intentions was not to actually hurt them.
The intention wasn't to actually hurt them, but they had their reasons to go to war, right? Were the reasons right or wrong? That's another discussion. But at the end of the day, over here, the Prophet ﷺ is basically talking about, okay, if you're doing it without right, if you have ill will, and if you have ill intent, and you want to hurt your Muslim brothers and sisters, this is where it's a problem, and this is where it's an issue.
It's like having a monopoly, well, not monopoly, I guess, like kind of.
Hypocrisy?
Yeah, hypocrisy, I guess.
For what? Maybe expand on that a little bit.
I think it's wrong.
Okay. No, it's fine. But this is a problem, right? If we talk about how Muslims should deal with each other, we should always try to deal with each other in peace and in harmony. The next hadith قال حدثنا قتيبة بن سعيد قال حدثنا يعقوب وهو ابن عبد الرحمن القاري وتحويل الإسناد وحدثنا أبو الأحوص محمد بن الحيان قال حدثنا ابن أبي حازم كلاهما عن سهيل أبي صالح عن أبيه عن أبي هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من حمل علينا السلاح فليس منا ومن غشنا فليس منا. So in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, there's an addition that Imam Muslim brings. It says, whoever raises their weapon or their sword against us is not from us. And he said, whoever cheats us is not from us. Whoever cheats us is not from us. Why pair these two together? Or why bring these two hadith?
Is the second one, is there something like, remember you told us last time they can add the opposite, or is it actually part of it?
So this addition?
Yeah.
You think is an addition to the hadith? There are other hadiths actually that support this. So I don't think that's the case here.
That's the case, yeah.
No.
It was actually.
Hmm.
Again, it could boil down to the niyyah, having a bad intention. It's almost.
Well, there's no doubt about that. But I'm saying whoever cheats us, whoever deceives us, is not from us. And go ahead.
Is this part more, I wouldn't say absolute, but literal?
This is more literal for sure.
Because being truthful and lying,
Mhm.
it's like it's heavy.
Mm.
So.
And not just that. So here, both of these, they actually hurt the Muslim, right? Whether a person be cheated or whether a person be physically harmed. And here, he's putting them in the same category. He's putting them together. And if we look at either of these, which one is actually more devastating? Being cheated, right? Being cheated. Because if a person raises their sword against me, I can still what? I can still defend myself. But if somebody cheats me, do I know? I don't know that I was being taken advantage of, right? Versus somebody raising their sword against me, it's very easy and very clear to see that I'm being taken advantage of. And this idea, remember we talked about cheating, we talked about stealing, we talked about zina. All of these things, what do they do to society? They break.
Distrust.
It causes, it sows distrust.
Yeah,
It sows distrust. Because is it possible that even two friends will fight?
yeah.
Right? It happens. But what happens the next day? Right? They might get over it, or they might, what I mean? Like, oh, this happened, or like, I didn't like that you said this. And people go, but if a person is cheated, what happens?
Can't trust them.
Right? It's difficult to trust them again. Fighting with someone doesn't actually what? It doesn't actually break trust, right? I might lose trust in how the person responds, but is that easier to repair, or is it easier to repair when someone's like, yeah, just give me like $100 and I'll take care of it, and he just takes my $100 and doesn't do anything, right? It's more difficult. Because that level of you actually trusted that person, right? Trusting somebody's response is very different. I might deal with that person differently, but I might still trust them with other things. So this idea of cheating is something that's it's very detrimental, very harmful, and I can see why the Prophet ﷺ actually put them together. وحدثنا يحيى بن أيوب وقتيبة وابن حجر جميعا عن إسماعيل بن جعفر قال ابن أيوب قال حدثنا إسماعيل قال أخبرني علاء عن أبيه عن أبي هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم مر على صبرة الطعام فأدخل يده فيها فنالت أصابعه بلل فقال ما هذا يا صاحب الطعام قال أصابته السماء يا رسول الله قال أفلا جعلته فوق الطعام كي يراه الناس من غش فليس مني. So over here the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he was in the marketplace, and basically what happens is he sees some dates and he put his hands in the dates, right? He put his hands or in the food, or whatever the seller had, and when he got to the bottom, his hands they were wet, right? So it was like these dry fruits and this dry food, and he put his hands in the bottom, and his hands came out wet, and he asked the seller, he's like, "What is this? What was going on here?" He's like, "Ya Rasulullah," he's like, "It rained." It rained, and the Prophet ﷺ, he responded to him. He said, why don't you put this on top? Like, the one that's wet, why don't you put it on top so that the people can see what it is that you're selling? Because if you have all of the nice food and all the nice fruits on the top, what are people going to assume? That it's all like that. But if you actually put the one that's bad on top, people will know what? They'll know exactly what it is that they're buying and what they're getting. And he said, "Man ghasha falaysa minni." He said, and whoever cheats is not from me. And whoever cheats is not from me. It's very much connected to the previous hadith. So over here, he is telling him what he's doing is wrong. What he's doing is wrong. So how do we deal with defects in our society today? And am I am I to show every buyer that comes in every defect of all my products?
Now.
I'm just saying in general. Like we have this hadith. Am I to show every consumer, or every person, or every customer that comes in, like every single defect in my space? Like if I have a restaurant and I go and show them, it's like, okay, hey, listen, this is where the rats come in from, and this is where sometimes where we have cockroaches. This is the food that's gone bad. How do we understand that in light of this hadith?
I mean, I think on this one, he intentionally put the ones on the top to make it look pretty.
Right.
And,
So if you're intentionally deceiving people,
the
yeah.
business, so he did not know until he actually,
Yeah.
and by just looking at it,
Yeah.
he was deceived.
So this is an excellent point. When you intentionally deceive someone, right? If you're making an effort to deceive someone, it doesn't mean that I need to show everyone what all the defects in my product, or all the it's like, yeah, hey, if you write with my pen 3 times, it'll break. These things might become apparent with time, right? But at the end of the day, if I'm being consistent with everything, if all my pens are like that, am I cheating anyone? No, right? I'm just trying to sell a very cheap pen, right? I'm not saying I have a quality pen. I'm not saying I have something that's amazing. It's like, listen, man, you're buying it for 3 cents. What are you expecting? Like, are you going to expect like a super quality product? It's like, man, this ran out of ink after like I couldn't even finish writing my name. It's like, that's what you're paying for. But if I gave that person a good pen, and like, yeah, here, go ahead, test it out, and then I have all these pens for sale, what have I done? Now I've intentionally deceived him. So there's a difference between having a product that's not good quality. Is it permissible to sell a low quality product?
Yes.
Why?
Because people know what they're buying.
Like, people know what they're buying, right? If I know what I'm purchasing, if I know what I'm buying, and like if I'm going to a dollar store, right, and I find a mop,
And breaks when you get home.
right? I know that mop is a one-time use mop, right? or it's like I'm going to use it a handful of times. And I know exactly what I'm purchasing. But if I come back to the dollar store after it breaks after 3 days and be like, what is this? You're cheating people and you're tricking them. Is that reasonable? No, not at all. So again, this idea of intentionally deceiving people, this is where it becomes an issue. Selling poor quality products, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that as long as I am. As long as I'm being open and I'm being truthful and I'm being honest, right? The idea again is not to intentionally hurt and not to intentionally deceive others. قال حدثنا يحيى بن يحيى قال أخبرنا أبو معاوية حاء وتحويل الإسناد وحدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا أبو معاوية ووكيع حاء وتحويل الإسناد وحدثنا ابن نمير قال حدثنا أبي جميعا عن الأعمش عن عبد الله بن مرة عن مسروق عن عبد الله قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليس منا من ضرب الخدود وأشق الجيوب أو دعا بدعوى أهل الجاهلية. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that he is not from us who beats their face, like who slaps their face, and he's not from us who rips their clothes, and he is not from us who says the statements or makes the statements of the pagan days of ignorance, the days of Jahiliyyah. هذا حديث يحيى أما ابن نمير وأبو بكر فقال وشق ودعا بغير ألف. So over here there's a little bit different in the wording, but over here what is happening? So an individual who's hitting themselves, right? An individual who's ripping their clothing, an individual who is making slogans and saying things. When do you think this situation is happening?
Usually they do something when they lost.
When somebody dies.
Why it should have been me? Why? It's like,
Yes. So all of this. What are you doing? Okay, stop. So all of these situations, like when somebody's like beating their chest or beating their face or ripping their clothes, and there are more situations than this. Why? Why is that a problem? Why did the Prophet ﷺ said that the people who do this are not from us? And we put this in the And we understand what the context is. The context is at the time of death. Huh? Grieving. Good. طيب.
When the first hits, like right on.
Sure. Yeah. Like when somebody first dies, then people they do all of these things. So why is the Prophet ﷺ, why does he warn against this? Why does he say that this is such a problem? Like
Going against the degree of.
So am I allowed to be upset when somebody passes? Okay.
They're hurting themselves and then they're selling, and then they're spreading, I guess, lies, you know?
Maybe like for the ripping your clothes, maybe it could be because of like there aren't that people that don't have maybe it could be one of those reasons.
Like israf, it's like wasting.
Yeah.
Okay, because you're destroying perfectly good property. Okay, that's reasonable. But even more than that, why? Why is that a problem? Yeah, why can't people grieve by being loud and scream and yell?
Oh, it's gonna cause more problems.
For who?
For the person, and also it's gonna spread like a lot to the problems like to other people.
Other people grieving?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to make other people feel worse.
Yeah, they want to also do the same. And
So isn't that what they're trying to do? So one of the reasons is like they want to openly grieve, right? They want to openly grieve. And we agree that there's no problem in grieving, correct? Okay, that's something we agree on. So why is the Prophet ﷺ so harsh against this? He says, they are not from me, the people who do this. So the people who slap their faces, people who rip their clothes, people who say these slogans, things like, it should have been me, why did you take him, right?
Because they're going, they're not happy with Allah.
Ahsant. Right, because this is open ingratitude. This is open ingratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not necessarily shirk. It depends on what they say, right? It depends on what they say. But in general, assuming that there's no shirky statements, this is showing ingratitude and it's showing a lack of being pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree.
When he saw Barry was talking about his son, he said, we can grieve, we feel sad.
Yeah.
But in that language,
Yeah.
so
He was like, the heart feels sorrow.
Heart feels sorrow.
And he was crying.
grief,
Yeah.
all that, those are,
He said he actually said this is for mercy.
Yeah.
This is for mercy that we cry.
But, so
And
he's prohibiting the other stuff.
But he's all of this stuff, again, grieving, and there's a way for us to grieve, right? There's a way for us to grieve, and not just that. Grieving is a process. Grieving is a process. But in Islam, how do we grieve? If somebody passes away, what do we do? Yes.
like try to make yourself not cry that much. Maybe just a little tear, but not that much.
I mean, the amount of crying, I can't really put I can't measure it, right? I can't say, okay, you can cry this much, you can't cry that much. That's a little difficult.
3 days.
Okay, so
You're off of work, family,
okay.
and then your neighbors.
So for 3 days, I am what?
You're not working.
So I'm excused from what?
From
Responsibility.
I'm excused from responsibility for 3 days. طيب. When do I start grieving? When do I stop grieving? The 4th day?
No, there's no timeline.
No.
It's as long as
Yeah. Yeah, there's no timeline.
there's no timeline.
No, there's no timeline to grief, right? The only thing that grief, I'm allowed to excuse myself from my personal responsibilities for 3 days. But from day 4 onward, I have to what?
You gotta go back.
I have to go back, right? I have to engage but I am allowed to continue to grieve. I can grieve for my whole life, right? I can grieve for my whole life. Usually the intensity of the grief, what happens with time? Right? It goes down. Does it necessarily ever leave? No, right? Depending on how close you are with that person, right? Depending on how close you are with that person. Like, my maternal grandmother, she died like over a decade ago, But I still get upset about it. But is it the same as being upset at the moment that she died? No, right? It's not the same intensity, but it's still a part of who I am, right? And it's something that grief is something we carry with us. And it's important to understand, like, grief, loss, anger, pain, right? These are all feelings that sometimes we feel. And those feelings are fine. There's nothing wrong with those feelings. And someone might say, like, okay, well, what do you do? Do I need to suppress them? No. I don't. No. I actually embrace them. Right? I embrace them. Why? Because that pain and that anger and that sadness and that grief, guess what? It becomes a part of who I am. It becomes a part of who I am. And why? Because the next time something like that happens, guess what? Huh? I don't, maybe not easier, but I'm more ready, right? Like I'm more prepared. I'm more prepared. Does it mean that, okay, the intensity of the grief won't be as strong? Not necessarily, right? It might not be, but because it's something I experienced before, I'm more controlled and I'm more prepared to deal with it. So these things are really important, to keep in mind when we talk about some of these things. So when I do this is a lack of sign of thankfulness. It's a lack of sign of it being pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree. But being sad is not a problem. Being sad doesn't mean that I'm displeased with Allah's decree. It just means I'm sad at the loss of whoever that individual was or whoever that person was, and whatever relationship it was that I had with that person. And sometimes we have closer relationships, sometimes they're further relationships, and intensities are always going to vary, but I am not allowed to express it in this way. I'm not allowed to express it in this way. Another reason for that is that the Prophet ﷺ, any abhorrent practice that was done during the pagan era, what did he want to do? He wanted to eradicate it, right? He basically, if there was any evil practice that was done during the pagan era, he wanted to make sure that such practices were what? Were absolutely, uprooted and completely removed. Did he remove every single pagan era practice? No, right? Because he how did he change the way he dressed before and after Islam? No, I actually had this conversation today. It's like, like in the West, this is how they dress and blah blah blah. And I was like, well, the Prophet dressed like Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl, right? So why is it okay to take pagan Arab clothing and call it Islamic, but we can't take Western clothing and call it Islamic? Is the idea for the Muslim to stand out? Was that the goal? No, right? That's not the purpose. The idea isn't for the Muslim to stand out or to be separate. Why? Why not? Shouldn't the Muslim, shouldn't we all be all walking flags of Islam?
It's not to stand out. They should be an example with their manners and how that
right. Because it's more important for what? These things.
Yeah, it's more important for those things. Someone to let other people look up to as far as akhlaq, but it's actually be in one community,
Right, because Muslims they join the larger community. Even the Prophet ﷺ, the complaints that the pagans had about him wasn't like, oh man, look, he's making us change the way that, look at how they're dressing now. They used to dress normal and now they're dressed. It's never like that. The changes were all where?
The problematic issues
The changes were all here. Right? The changes were all here. They weren't here. They weren't superficial. They don't care. They could care less. And why did the people didn't come to Islam because they're like, oh man, the Prophet ﷺ, he dresses really nicely, so I want to be, I want to be Muslim. That wasn't the reason. The reason was because he was honest, because he was upright, because he was truthful, because he was kind, because he was generous. And the amazing thing about all those characteristics is you can't, if you look at someone, you can't what? You can't tell, you can't see, right? You can't look across the room and be like, oh, this person's generous, and this person's honest, and this person, no, man. That person actually has to interact with people for you to see that, and he has to become known for those things. And this shows us about our deen and our religion, that this is not a religion of being superficial, right? It's not a superficial thing. The changes have to be internal, right? It has to be internal. And when we have those internal changes, guess where they show up? In your day-to-day actions. And that's what changes the people's hearts. Not how you look, but how you? How you what? How you act. Ahsant. How you act. وحدثنا عثمان بن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا جرير وتحويل الإسناد وحدثنا إسحاق بن إبراهيم وعلي بن الخشرم قال أخبرنا عيسى بن يونس جميعا عن الأعمش بهذا الإسناد وقال وشق ودعا. So over here, again, it's just a difference in how some of these things are expressed, but basically they rip their clothes and they scream. قال حدثنا الحكم بن موسى القنطري قال حدثنا يحيى ابن حمزة عن عبد الرحمن بن يزيد بن جابر أن القاسم ابن مخيمرة حدثه قال حدثنا أبو بردة ابن أبي موسى قال وجع أبو موسى وجعا فغشي عليه ورأسه في حجر امرأة من أهله فصاحت امرأة من أهله فلم يستطع أن يرد عليها شيئا فلما أفاق قال أنا بريء مما برئ منه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فإن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم برئ من الصالقة والحالقة والشاقة. So over here the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم basically Abu Musa was afflicted with a pain, like he was in pain, and he was in his wife's quarters, right? He was in his wife's quarters, he was laying down and in her lap, and one of the women screamed. One of the women screamed because he was in extreme pain, and he passed out. So Abu Musa, he wasn't able to say anything because of the extreme pain that he was in, but after the pain subsided, he said, radiallahu anh, he said, I have no concern with one with whom the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has no concern. Yani, I am free of the person who the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is free from. He said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is free from that woman who wails loudly, shaves her hair, and tears her garments. Again, these are all signs of ingratitude. In extreme what? In extreme shows of grief, right? These are extreme shows of grief, and something that the Prophet ﷺ had zero tolerance for. قال حدثنا عبد بن حميد وإسحاق بن منصور قال أخبرنا جعفر بن عون قال أخبرنا أبو عميس سمعت أبا صخرة يذكر عن عبد الرحمن بن يزيد وأبي بردة ابن أبي موسى قال أغمي على أبو موسى وأقبلت امرأته عبد الله تصيح برنة قال ثم أفاق قال ألم تعلمي وكان يحدثها عن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أنا بريء مما حلق وسلق وخرق. So here he said that there is the same story, it's a similar story. So Abu Musa, he passed out, and his wife, she yelled, right? His wife, she yelled, and when he woke up from it, or when he came back into conscious, he says, do you not know? And he was telling her that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Ana bari'un mimman halaqa wa salaqa wa kharaqa." He said, I am free from the one who shaves, the one who beats, and the one who tears. And that person is doing that again out of extreme grief. قال وحدثني عبد الله بن مطيع قال حدثنا حشيم عن حسين عن عياد الأشعري عن امرأة أبي موسى عن أبي موسى عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حاو تحويل الإسناد. وحدثني حجاج ابن شاعر قال حدثنا عبد الصمد قال حدثني أبي قال حدثنا داود يعني ابن أبي هند قال حدثنا عاصم عن صفوان ابن محرز عن أبي موسى عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حاو وتحويل الإسناد. وحدثنا الحسن ابن علي الحلواني قال حدثنا عبد الصمد قال أخبرنا شعبة عن عبد الملك بن عمير عن ربيعي ابن حراش عن أبي موسى عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بهذا الحديث غير أن في حديث عياد الشري قال ليس منا ولم يقل بريء. So over here, same narration, but instead of saying that the Prophet ﷺ is free of or not concerned with, he said is not from me, is not from me. So the meaning is the same, and Allah knows best. But also stop here. Wallahu a'lam, sallallahu alaihi wa
لا